You could, if you're still recording, you can add on a bit, and I can just pretend that I'm really quiet. We have some rather choice feedback.
This is what happens when you go away for 3 weeks or 4 weeks between episodes or however long it's been.
That's right, although nobody would suspect that if you hadn't have said it just there. Nobody would have suspected that we were...
Or if we hadn't spent half of the last episode talking about it.
Yeah, I guess we kind of gave it away there, didn't we?
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag where that's concerned, I think.
Yes. So I think I will lead off, if you don't mind, with a very nice email that we received from Tyler Weingartner, who is one of our avid listeners.
Friend of the show.
Yes, friend of the show. And he mentioned that it's the only podcast that he's actually gone back and listened to the previous shows to make sure that he's completely up to date. Now, I have to question whether he does that because there are actually only 5 previous shows at the time that he wrote the email.
Yes, I am very honored that he has made the effort. I suspect that effort will become increasingly difficult and increasingly rare as time goes on. But thank you very much, Tyler, for listening back.
Tyler's a very good friend of mine, and we share an interest in all things technical. And Tyler mentioned that when he's in the workshop doing what he does for the maker community, he enjoys putting us on. And I urge anyone else out there in the maker community who's listening, please get in touch and let us know the kinds of things that you're interested to hear on the show. Tyler actually mentioned that whilst not being a big watch fan himself, he is being a man of mechanics. He does love the concept and the idea of the watch mechanism, and he actually linked to a channel on YouTube called KIX-SFO, where an Australian machinist actually goes through and creates an entire mechanical clock mechanism from scratch over the course of, I guess, about, 10 to 15 episodes?
Yeah, I think it might be even more than that. The whole thing was a huge amount of time that he put into it. Obviously, each episode is 10 or so minutes, but you can imagine the number of hours that goes into each episode.
Yeah.
I think the total project was about 1,000 hours of his time.
But actually, Tyler mentioned that the video that he linked to us is the final in this series where the KIX-SFO guy actually finally completes all of the parts for his clock mechanism and then assembles them. And Tyler mentioned that we may want to skip past the milling parts because they tend to be a bit boring if you're not into that kind of thing. But actually, I think fans of Station 13, you probably will enjoy this because the commentary is excellent, and like watching a professional do clay pottery, like on a rotating, like a rotating pottery wheel. It's sort of strangely soothing to watch this man sort of cut through this sort of metal on a mill, cutting through it like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah,
it's sort of strangely therapeutic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. I watched the whole of the video that he linked, which was the last one in the series, and then in the related videos, they had another sort of bonus video, which was a 12-minute splice up of the entire series into one 12-minute video. And so that one had no vocal commentary. It was just music.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. I mean, the actual videos in the series look great because they're nicely explained. He goes through, what he's doing and why he's doing it. And he has that presenter Australian accent. I know what that sort of received pronunciation in English is, like BBC English, the presenter English. But this sounds to me at least like the Australian equivalent, because I've heard that exact accent before, and it's always sort of very well-spoken, nice kind of presenter, kind of on TV kind of people. I don't know if I've met someone who talks like that, like to me in real life.
No.
But it's just really nice and easy to listen to.
Yeah, no, you haven't met anybody like that, have you? No, who talks in a very nice Australian accent? No. Alex,
your accent is beautiful, but it is not the same as that accent. It is a different accent.
It sounds to me like the sort of Sydney or Melbourne Eastern Seaboard newscaster accents in Australia.
That's what I mean. Like when I'm saying presenter, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Like the newscaster or like the host of a children's TV show. We're saying, come on, let's explain how we're going to do this. And like everything's kind of very crisp, but also imbued with this sense of fun, which is like...
Which is nothing like the way I talk, is it? Which is...
No. Yours is sloppy and dull.
That's right. Although there is a very famous podcast with a fellow Adelaide presenter on it, who is, I've even forgotten his name.
His name is, you're thinking of Hello Internet with Brady Harron, right?
There we go. That's right.
Yes.
He also hails from Adelaide, although he lives in England now. So anyway, thank you, Tyler, for the email, and please, if you have other friends in the maker community who you think might be interested in our show, please give us a recommendation. We are looking to expand our listener base. We always love hearing from listeners who are enjoying the show.
That's true, and even not just the maker community. Although I think you'll be hard pressed to beat Tyler, who's listening to the show while making awesome things with cool machines. But anybody who's listening while they're doing something interesting, whether it's their job or some thing that they're doing sort of on the side, a hobby project, or if they listen while they're cycling to some interesting place or anything really, would be interested to hear what you're doing while you're listening, because I think that's always a sort of, everyone has their own, podcasts are something you often do while you're doing something else. And that something else can often be quite interesting. Yeah,
I'm really curious to hear about that, because I've never myself been one for this kind of talkback podcast, which is a funny thing to say as somebody who's actually doing one right now. It could be because my job is making music and sound.
Right. You are disadvantaged in that respect.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to do anything else except to listen to my own horrible sound and music while I'm working. So I'm very curious about what the kinds of things that people actually do. Because I don't know about you, Dani, but if I'm working and trying to concentrate on something, I can't even have voices in the music that I'm listening to.
Right.
If I'm working on something other than music production, like say I'm writing emails or I'm doing a spreadsheet for finances or something like that, like calculating tax or whatever. If I have to concentrate, any kind of music that has vocals in it, I just my ears just get pulled away and I start listening to the music.
I think we talked about this once before, because I was asking you for hip hop recommendations, and you were saying that while you were into London grime and all that, you couldn't listen to it while you were working on anything because it would just put you off.
Right. So that's why, like, the idea of listening to talkback, such as Station 13 and Hello Internet and many, many, many others, to me, it seems a mystery. Like, when would you actually be able to do that? I suppose driving or riding on public transport.
Yeah, those are quite common. I mostly listen on my commute. I'm programming, and programming it involves words. It's not the same as language. It's not the same as speaking English, but it's still, you're manipulating words and grammar of sort of a different kind.
Right.
And so it is quite difficult. I think it is quite difficult to concentrate when you've got talking in the background. So I actually rarely listen to podcasts while I'm actively programming. The exception is when I'm doing something really easy. Because sometimes there are jobs you have to do that involve a lot of typing, but not a lot of thought. Like, you're essentially following patterns. It's a bit like doing a Rubik's Cube. When you know the patterns really well, and especially if you're using a powerful text editor like Vim or Emacs, you kind of just get into the flow of, these are the transformations I want to make, and I'm not even really thinking about the content all that much. I'm just kind of blindly going through the process of making all these changes in one big lump. And when I'm doing that kind of work, it's really boring work. So sometimes I might listen to podcasts while I'm doing that. But as soon as I have to actually think about anything, I do find it very difficult to do at the same time as listening to podcasts.
Yeah, I might have a problem because when I'm playing bass, I'm a bass player of maybe more than 25 plus years or whatever.
There's your problem.
Yeah, that's my problem. I can't even talk when I'm playing bass, and let alone sing. I can't even talk. So my mind needs to either talk, in which case my fingers just go all sloppy and then the bass line becomes mud, or I play, in which case when I talk, it just sort of, it's like the mouth is moving, the tongue is flapping, the voice box is operating, but nothing else is connecting. So it just all, which is really kind of embarrassing, because I can be out in the middle of jamming with a band. Somebody can shout out a question to me, and I just can't answer it.
Yeah, that is. I'm always impressed by drummers who can sing while they're drumming. It's a rare talent.
I think that the more micro the movement that you're making, the harder it is. So, for example, bass playing is very micro movement because you're moving fingers, you're moving your digits. And drumming or playing guitar, especially if you're playing like folk guitar, it's much more, you grab a chord and you strum, which is a sort of a more of a macro movement. Same with drumming, obviously you have the micro movements with your fingers and your wrists to control the sticks, but basically overall it is essentially macro movements. So it may be a little bit less difficult.
I'm not sure. I think drumming is hard. Because drumming is so rhythmic and the rhythm is often different to the rhythm of the vocals, and I think that's really hard to keep up.
I mean, I'm only basing this on myself. I can talk while I can play. I can talk while I play drums, but that could be because I play.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, I play drums really badly, so it could be because
you can't tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Prioritizing talking while I'm playing drums, you just can't tell that I'm actually getting all sloppy on the drums. So, anyway, what other feedback do we have?
Oh well, we had a couple of things. Firstly, very briefly, we were talking last episode about the communication difference, the speed of light, and how long it would take if you were waving from the moon, how long it would take you to see that from here. And the answer, as researched by another friend of the show, Jetta, he tweeted us at Station 13 FM with the answer 1.3 seconds, apparently, which he got off the Wikipedias.
That's surprisingly short.
Really, I was expecting it to be shorter, actually.
Okay.
Interesting, we've come in from different angles. The speed of light is very fast indeed. And I thought that the moon, on the scale of the universe, the moon is outrageously close. I had thought it would be in the milliseconds range, but you thought it would be longer, did you?
Yeah, I thought it would be a bit, maybe sort of a few minutes, I thought, but that could be my peanut brain trying to process the scale of everything. And obviously when you go astronomical, scales become very, very surreal.
Right.
So, yeah, I thought it would be longer, but that's interesting. 1.3 seconds, eh?
Yeah, 1.3 seconds. So you could just about FaceTime from the moon. And it would be doable. The latency is about the same as when I used to call my granny in Zimbabwe 20 odd years ago.
I was just going to say it's like a 90s international phone call, about 1.3 seconds.
Right.
Just on a slight tangent there, I was thinking the other day that the reason that we have seasons, summer and winter, is because the Earth rotates on a tilt, right?
Right.
Which means that at some part of the year, the Earth is actually slightly closer to the sun.
The point on the Earth that you stand.
Right.
The Earth itself is slightly closer to the sun at some parts of the year, and also the Earth is on a tilt. There's two things, right? There's the orbit around the sun, which I think is not a perfect circle with the sun perfectly in the middle, although I'm not totally sure of the details of that.
Right.
But there's also the fact that the Earth is tilted relative to the sun.
Right.
So the point that you are on the Earth makes a difference as well.
Right. And then I was thinking that, when you think about as animals ourselves, as human, as living animals on this planet, or living organisms, I should say, from our point of view, the difference between summer and the difference between winter, when you think, oh, it's really cold or it's really, really hot, is created by this minuscule tilt.
Right.
Which makes you think then that if the Earth was on the astronomical scale, if you just sort of shifted the Earth a little bit, all of a sudden it would be, just scorching. There'll be nothing living on it. It'd be just sort of a planet of flames, or it would be a planet of ice. And it's just sort of, I was thinking the other day, the whole idea of the Goldilocks zone and the fact that the Earth the position of the Earth is so perfect and such a coincidence and suited for the development of biological life forms such as ourselves. Just the slightest change on the astronomical scale would render all of this entirely impossible. That's pretty incredible.
Right. There's every little thing is right, which seems like an amazing coincidence that we're the exact right size, we're the exact right distance from the sun. We have not too much of a skew to our orbit, so we don't spend sort of half the year miles away and half the year ridiculously close. and the chemical makeup is also well suited, and all that seems like an amazing coincidence. But there are a lot of planets, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, this is the one we're on.
Right.
The other ones that don't match all those parameters, it's not really a coincidence that that's not the one we're looking at, because precisely because they don't meet those parameters, there's no life on them.
Right. Yeah, it's also, like we were saying last week or the week before, or whenever it was, last episode, whenever it was, saying about looking at the stars in the night sky is looking into the past. Just astronomy is cool, and it boggles the mind, truly.
Yeah, it is cool. Actually, we got one more comment from another friend of the show, Tema.
Yep.
Just minutes ago, about half an hour ago, and he said another way that you can think of the light coming from such a distance is that it's old by that point, right? And it's actually, I'll find exactly what he said. He said an alternative way of looking at things is that the starlight is old, and let's face it, a little dingy after being around for a few million years. Maybe even a bit dirty, like bad, unkempt antique, which is like the Tom Waits approach to the beauty of the universe.
That's an interesting idea. Can light become dirty and soiled?
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer is no, but it does. I mean, like we were saying briefly last time, it does get warped. So it's not like it arrives completely unchanged from its origin.
Right.
So there are interesting things here.
Interesting.
And there's the whole background radiation. There's lots of cool space stuff we could talk about, but we won't.
We won't. I mean, just before we finish up the follow-up, there is one more follow-up nugget that we have.
We got a tweet. This is going quite a way back now, but unfortunately I saw this tweet just after we recorded the last 2 episodes back to back, so we didn't get a chance to fit it in. But this was from listener Miguel, who was listening to show number 4, which was the travel special where we talked about Greece and Germany and Kyoto. And we also talked about how I enjoy the feeling of being outside but undercover in the rain.
Because you're British.
Because, well, that was one theory that was postulated. But Miguel is Spanish, and he contacted us and said that he also enjoys that feeling. And in fact, while he was in Kyoto, he recorded some very nice video with what I assume is a fancy camera. And he's put that up on YouTube, so there'll be a link in the show notes. But I think it beautifully captures how Japan specifically is really nice for this thing of being able to be outside watching the rain fall down on this beautiful scenery around you. So it's a very nice video, and we'll stick it in. And, maybe it's not a British thing. Maybe it's a Spanish thing, because I was born in Spain as well. So maybe that's the missing link.
Well, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. I don't know if that's relevant.
That is what they say. And but you need some sort of cover for this to be relevant.
That's
so
right.
There's not much cover in the plains.
Those Spaniards know what they're talking about when it comes to rain, don't they?
Certainly they know their diction.
Yes.
Okay, so there's another big piece of news.
Yep.
Which is that as we record, you are not in Japan.
I am not. This is true. You and I have actually done a fair amount of traveling in the past week or two between us to different places in the world.
We have.
I am actually coming to you now from Stockholm in Sweden. We have been, over the past year, awaiting the arrival of our residency permits for the country of Sweden. And a few weeks ago, they finally came through. And I'm now here by myself in Stockholm looking for an apartment. And when I've found that, my family will come to join me. And thus begins our adventure in Sweden.
Very exciting.
Yes, it's been 15 years that I was, a bit more than 15 years that I lived in Japan. And various work-related things, as well as a sort of, emotionally just sort of seeking a closure to the time that I had in Japan, because I love Japan. Of course I do. After living there for 15 years. And it's amazing that I was first in Japan when I was 21. And to think how your environment and the country that you live in and the society and the friends that you have and the work that you do shapes you as a person.
Right.
To me, of course, Japan having been there for, the better part of almost half my life.
Basically all of your adult life.
Yeah, basically. It's always going to be imprinted on my character, I guess, which it's a wonderful thing to take from the country. But, I was feeling there were obviously work opportunities as well, but I was also feeling and family considerations too, but I was feeling a desire to move on and to start up a new chapter and basically mix things up a little bit. And this is, I pretty much got what I asked for, because here I am from Northern Europe, the lovely country of Sweden.
Very exciting. So now we have a podcast, one of the main hooks of which is that we're two game developers in Japan, where neither of us is in Japan and one of us is no longer making games.
That's right.
Good times.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's where I am at the moment. I have some interesting things to talk about with regard to how I got here. But before we get into that, let's just catch up on where you've been in the past week.
Oh, okay. Well, as we mentioned in the last podcast, I have been in England, which I didn't mention this, but I was actually there for 2 weddings.
Wow.
Yeah, my friends very kindly got together and arranged their weddings within a week of each. Actually, they didn't. These are 2 separate friends that I know from totally different contexts that I think have met each other once,
right,
which was at my wedding. But by complete coincidence, they had these 2 weddings next to each other, which I was very pleased, because I think I would have liked to have gone back for both of these weddings, but I couldn't have made 2 trips back to England. So I would have had to drop one or the other had they been further apart. So I was very pleased that I was able to fit both of them in.
Nice.
And it was very nice. It was a nice trip. So as a result of these 2 weddings from these 2 groups of friends that live quite far apart, it ended up being a bit of a tour of the whole of England, because we started off in Stratford, which is where I'm from. And I spent a day, basically just one day with my parents, and my wife and I went with my parents to Warwick Castle, which is one of the biggest sort of tourist attractions in the area. But in the 3 times we've been before, my wife and I haven't actually been. So she's never seen Warwick Castle. And I don't think I've been there since I was a teenager.
Right.
So last time I went, I had been many times recently. We'd gone on school trips, and then whenever our cousins came over from Australia or South Africa or whatever, we would take them to Warwick Castle. And so it was kind of a little bit old hat by the time that I left England. But now it's been something like 10 or 15 years probably since I've last been. And it was amazing. Warwick Castle is so good. So I definitely recommend it to anyone who's in Warwickshire. You're probably already going if you're a tourist and you're in Warwickshire, because apart from the Shakespeare stuff, it's the next big thing that you probably go to. But it is a castle that remains in pretty impressive condition, considering it was originally founded, I think, in the 14th century. Right. And there has been a castle on that site ever since, although it's been done up many times. And I think the most recent big sort of renovation to it happened in the 18th or 19th century. Whoever owned it at the time wanted to sort of do it up. But when they did, actually, interestingly, they purposefully made it look kind of medieval.
I see.
I think at that time, whenever it was in the 18th or 19th century, whether it was fashion or whether it was just that family who owned this castle, who lived there, they wanted to give it this medieval feel. So it's funny because we look at it now and think of it as being super old. But it is as if the people, if you imagine someone now might do up their castle to make it look a few hundred years old, and you would think that's a bit tacky.
Right.
They did that, but they did it 200 years ago, so it's passed through tacky and become cool again.
Wow.
But as well as that, they've got these huge grounds. They've got peacocks in the grounds, which are always nice to see. And they have a number of events that they put on, especially over the summer. So we saw the Birds of Prey exhibition, where they have a real falconer who shows you all these different birds of prey and sends them flying around, and they fly really low. I think my dad was taking a video of one of them, and the wing actually clipped his hand holding the camera as it was swooping down above him.
Wow.
So they fly right over you. But it's, they're very well trained, so they're not going to pet your eyes out or anything. And they had a trebuchet as well, a real trebuchet, which, you know what a trebuchet is, right? That they used to, the huge war machines, like it's essentially a slingshot, right? But massive.
Actually, I didn't know that. I only know the font.
Oh, really? Oh, well. A trebuchet is like have you seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
A long time ago. I don't remember it too well.
I think that's what they used to fling cows over the wall in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Anyway, it's a huge slingshot. It's about 3 stories high, I think.
Right.
And the sort of wooden structure. And then from that is, I don't know, a chain or something, some softer sort of material, which hangs down, and then you put your load in there. And then you pull it back, which obviously it takes 2 men turning this wheel. It's a lot of effort to pull it right back. And then you let go and fling it forward, and it can shoot its content at something like 150 miles an hour, and it can go 300 miles, I think. So it can go, it's seriously powerful weapon.
Right.
But they didn't, I don't think they used to shoot it from 300 miles away. They used to shoot it from right up next to the castle and just fling rocks into the walls. It's quite effective. And also fling things over the walls as well.
Right.
So that was pretty impressive. The one thing we didn't get to see, which was unfortunate, because they also do this during the summer, and this sounds like a lie, but it's genuinely true. They have jousting.
Wow.
Like actual jousting where they have, I haven't seen it for years, so I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure they have actual men wearing actual plate armor on horses trying to knock each other off with poles.
That's how would you do that and still be able to guarantee the safety of the participants?
Well, they're very well trained.
Right.
And I'm sure they've signed a number of waivers.
Yeah, because like as far as sports go, it's pretty hard to imagine how you can get through a jousting match and not be mortally injured.
It's not a sport. When I say they have jousting, it's not like anybody is allowed to sign up and join in.
No, of course not.
Like if they had a football tournament or something. It's more, it's a demonstration. So I'm sure they've decided ahead of time, for example, who is going to win. And so I don't think they're actually competing. I suspect that the people who are going to fall off know they're going to fall off.
I see.
So that they sort of, the one can pull his blow a bit and the other one can sort of jump off at the last minute.
So it's a little bit like medieval pro wrestling.
Right. Yes, exactly. And as we were walking up to the castle, we saw their truck. They have their, the horse carriers, very distinctive shape of truck. And they had their mark on the side saying the such and such jousting crew or whatever. I guess they must go all around to castles all around the country and do these demonstrations. But they were just setting up. And I got all excited and was saying, we might be able to see some jousting. Turned out we were going on Thursday. The jousting started, the season started that Saturday and runs now and through August. So we just missed it. So that was very unfortunate. But it gives us another excuse to go on a future occasion.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. So that was fantastic. And then from then we went up to Newcastle, spent a few days there for one wedding, went down to Cambridge, spent a few days with my sister there. And Cambridge is one of my absolute favorite cities. I love it.
Yeah, Cambridge is great.
We talked, at one point, we were talking about potentially moving to Cambridge, not moving in together, but we were both talking about moving.
Well, I wouldn't mind that either, Danny, but no, that's...
I'm sure your wife would have a thing or two to say about it.
No, Cambridge is great. It's just great. I mean, what can you say about it? It's excellent food, great people, the beautiful city to look at. You have obviously the university there, and there's so much heritage.
And the river.
Yeah, of course, the River Cam.
Ton of bookshops.
Yeah, and quite a good music scene too, I hear, in Cambridge. I mean, not on the scale.
And good comedy scene as well, because basically all the famous British comedians come out of, I think it's called Footlights, the Cambridge University Drama Society. Like, a lot of the famous guys came out of that.
That's where Rowan Atkinson came from there, didn't he? I think so.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And I think Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie and I think French and Saunders probably came from there as well, but I'm not sure about them.
Actually, did you know that Pink Floyd came from Cambridge?
Oh, there's another one, yeah. Ali G. Do you know Ali G?
Pink Floyd is not a comedian, Danny.
I know that Pink Floyd is not a comedian, I'm just saying, I remembered somebody else that was slightly unexpected that came from Cambridge.
Anyway, yeah, so it's a great city. So did you I guess enjoyed? How much time were you in Cambridge for? Did you enjoy some food?
I did not have more than one full day in any place, I don't think, until the end.
Right.
So we arrived in Stratford in the evening, then we had one full day, then we left in the morning and spent a day traveling. And then we actually had 2 full days in Newcastle, but one was tied up with a wedding.
Right.
So then we had one day of doing our own thing. And then the next day we spent the whole day going down to Cambridge. After that, one full day in Cambridge, and then the next day was going to Stratford. And then from then on, we were there. So it was a very sort of up and down, all over the place kind of trip. But the one full day was enough to go punting on the river.
Yep. Oh, nice.
To go see the botanical gardens.
Yep.
And to go and see the chapel at King's College. So we did all the tourist things.
Right.
Which is funny because I've been to Cambridge many times before because I had a friend of the show, in fact, who has commented in earlier episodes. He currently lives in Seattle, but he used to live in Cambridge. And I used to visit him quite often. But because I was going to visit him, we very rarely did any of the tourist things.
Right.
We'd just hang around at his house, or we might go out to a restaurant or a pub. But we didn't see all these things. So this was nice to get the chance to do all that. And I also went to the market. They've got a market in Market Square basically every day, but some days it's a farmer's market and some days it's like a general market. And on this occasion, they had a bookstore with loads of old books. And this is sort of, maybe we'll talk about this more another time, but my dumb hobby that I'm doing at the moment is studying ancient Greek.
Right.
So I kind of had a flick through. I was looking through this bookstore and I was like, there's no way they're going to have books in ancient Greek. I know these books look old, but, but they're not that old. But I was looking through and they had a few in Latin. So I was like, okay. So I asked the guy on the stall and he said, oh, hang on a second. We've got the Liddell and Scott lexicon. I'll just I put it in the box, but I'll just dig it out for you. And he dug it out and it was the, I think, 1950 publication of this lexicon, which is a dictionary,
right,
called Liddell and Scott, which is one of the most sort of commonly used dictionaries for ancient Greek, and the one that all the websites, when you look things up on the dictionary, that's their source,
right.
And he had a hardcover copy of that for £5.
Wow,
it's great. So I picked that up.
Oh, you got it, great.
Yeah. So that was for that sort of thing. I think for somebody with weird hobbies like mine, Cambridge is a great city to live in.
That's great. Yeah, I have great memories. I went there with my wife and my parents on a holiday. We spent, because actually I'm proud to say that my ancestry on my father's side is from Cambridgeshire. And not from Cambridge, from Ely, which is a smaller town close by to Cambridge.
Right, just outside, yeah.
Yeah, we spent several days in Cambridge. We stayed in a little, tiny little sort of bed and breakfast. No, not really bed and breakfast, kind of a lodge place. Also in a small town called, don't remember the name, but it's in between Cambridge and Ely, and basically sort of drove into Cambridge each day to do stuff there. Just fantastic, excellent food, excellent food, yeah. And just a great vibe. So what else did you get up to? Any other interesting observations or things that you did while you were there?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that was about it for the tourism, and then the rest of it was just digging around in my attic for things that I wanted to relieve my parents of and take back with me to the States.
Right.
But there were a couple of funny things that I noticed, which is from my perspective of going back to England after quite a long time away, many years in Japan and nearly a year now in the US. And there was some funny, because I still think of myself as pretty English and not that modified by the Japanese experience. I haven't gone native, as it were.
Right.
But there were some funny things I noticed that have just sort of I've internalized. And one of them was crossing the road. Because when I first moved to Japan, I don't know how it is in Australia, but when I first moved to Japan, I found it really funny that people would just stop and wait when the pedestrian light was red, even on these tiny little roads. Because you're walking up Karasuma in Kyoto, and you've got all these tiny little side roads, and there's no cars for miles around, and the light's red, but it's obviously you could just go. And I found it really funny that they just stop and wait every time for the light to turn green, and then go.
That must be a Kyoto thing, because in Osaka, people are famously brazen, famously ignorant of traffic lights.
Well, anyway, and obviously here in America, most of the roads are like 12 lanes wide anyway. So you're obviously not going to just skip across them. And jaywalking is illegal here.
Who walks anyway?
And nobody walks. So, but going back to England, after all this time, I found myself stopping at a crossing, pressing the button, waiting, and they're just watching all these people stream past me across the road. Because they were like, well, obviously there's no cars. We're going to cross. And I had forgotten how common that is and how I, too, would have just made that judgment and gone. But, yeah, so that was a thing that I've definitely slightly adjusted to the Japanese and now the American way of doing things, because I found it really... And then I was like out in town with my parents and they're just going across the road. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm running to catch up. So, yeah, no, that was funny. And the other thing that I had forgotten, this is another peculiar, like enjoying being undercover in the rain. But... you have games that you play when you're in the car, and people have like I Spy with My Little Eye.
Yeah, we had in our family there was one called Animal, Vegetable, Mineral.
Yeah, right. Or we call it 20 questions. I think you're trying to narrow down, starting with the question: is it animal, vegetable, or mineral? You're trying to narrow down what the thing is that somebody's thinking of, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there was a game. It's not to call it a game is a bit much, but there's a solitaire version of these car games,
right?
Which I just used to play in my own head, not with anyone else, but just when I was bored sitting in the car, and obviously having never driven, I was always being driven around by other people, right? My parents or my friends. And British number plates are well suited to this. Spotting acronyms and file extensions on number plates. And I didn't consciously make this up as a game or anything. It was never something I consciously tried to do. But the UK number plates are composed of two sections. They have a letter, and then I think it's a letter and then three numbers, and then a space, and then three letters, right?
Right.
So you'll have like G797 FYB or something like that.
Right. And
those obviously three letters is prime acronym and file extension material. Right. And so just occasionally you pass a car with like JPG at the end. You're like, oh, it's a JPEG. And this was a thing that I did without thinking. I wasn't like going out of my way, like craning my neck looking for cars or anything.
Right.
But I would just relatively frequently, because there are a large number of acronyms and file extensions in the world, relatively frequently, on most drives, there would at least be one or two cars that had something interesting for their last three letters. And I had completely forgotten that I had this habit until we arrived at the airport. This is the moment we arrived. We got off the plane, and my parents had very kindly come down to Heathrow to pick us up. And on the 2-hour drive back to Stratford, I just kept on seeing all these file extensions popping up everywhere. I was like, oh, yeah. I remember England's great.
So did you catch any esoteric file extensions? Like let's see if I can think of a few, like IFF or
No, I didn't spot an IFF. Actually, I'm not sure what an IFF is. What's an IFF?
IFF is interchange file format from the Commodore Amiga. Used to be.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't have even known that one. I don't think.
Yeah, it used to be used for. I'll have to. Oh, this is embarrassing. It used to be used for image files, I think bitmaps, and also
right.
I think also sound samples could be IFF as well. I have to check up that.
All right, interesting. Like a container format. Actually, speaking of the Amiga, that was one of the things that I found in my attic. There was an Amiga 1200 sitting in there. I almost took a photo of it.
Classic. The 1200 is my favorite of the family. But anyway, did you catch any? Which extensions did you see? Did you get a PDF or a?
I think there was a PDF actually.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't note them down because, like I say, this was never really that serious a game. It's just a sort of a thing to spot idly as you're driving along. And sometimes there are extensions. Like I think there might have been a PDF, and like JPEG is surprisingly common. Like the common extensions,
right?
by coincidence or maybe just because those are the ones that jump out at you the most. But there are quite a few of them. But you'll also get, acronyms like you use in tech speak. I don't think there was an LOL. You get IDK for I don't know and things like that.
WTF
right. I don't think I saw a WTF. That would be, I would want to give that one a prize.
I think that would be one. I think we should definitely take a note down here at this point to come back to the topic of file formats and file extensions, because it is a fun topic to talk about. It would be a fun topic for you and I to talk about. I don't know how many other people would be interested, but it's let's make a note to come back that as a future topic. And if you're listening and you have some, I don't know, favorite old defunct file extensions or file types that you miss, such as IFF, there are many others, of course, then let us know, because that'd be an interesting topic to have.
Or if you're listening in the car and you spot any interesting file extensions amongst your fellow drivers, which will be easier if you're in the UK than most countries, tweet them at us. Tell us, sneak a photo.
Nobody will mind.
Send us your... Yeah, nobody will... Don't worry about the privacy concerns. We didn't spend 2 episodes talking about nothing else. Send us your neat file extensions that you see on the road.
Fantastic. So,
don't take photos while you're driving.
No, don't do that. Just stop.
Or if you see cars parked, or just don't take a photo and remember it for later. But anyway, yes, file extensions, cool.
Yeah, actually, coming back to my trip over here to Sweden, through a number of complicated problems, I actually ended up riding to Sweden on business class.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Which airline?
So this was Emirates.
Emirates. Oh, I hear. I imagine their business class must be even better.
Yeah. So I had from Kansai in Western Japan to Dubai, I had business class, and then from Dubai to Stockholm, the flight was so full that they actually upgraded me to first class.
Oh.
So I had the complete luxury Emirates experience, including the Emirates Lounge in Dubai, which is huge, absolutely huge.
Is it made of gold?
There's a lot of gold there, and it's not actually real gold, but it's very shiny, and it is absolutely huge. Like, it's kind of like the, I think there are scenes in the Matrix where they're standing with the background goes all white, and then there's like this sort of endless.
The one. Oh, you mean the one where all the guns come out?
Oh, something. I remember. I haven't seen.
They're standing in that sort of white area with nothing in it, and then
there's this long
Morpheus
shelf.
Sort of clicks his fingers or something, and these huge, long, infinite shelves of guns comes out, and they select what they're going to.
It's basically like that. Like, it just actually stretches on further than your eye can see, and this is just the business class lounge. It was amazing. So anyway, I wanted to just recount the experience because it was actually quite interesting, and also I know you'll have some interesting feedback because you've also ridden business class, and I think one topic that we did have, when was it? It might have been on one of our train rides together. We did actually talk a little bit about business class and the difference between business class and economy class. So, starting off on that point, yes, Dani, you're right. Business class is great.
It's pretty good.
It's great. I mean, I had ridden it once before, and previously I kind of found it a bit annoying because basically, yeah, you get a bigger seat and it is more comfortable, much more legroom. But I found it a little bit annoying because at that time, this was many years ago, and I think it might have been Qantas. They came out to serve the business class meals, which are served to you on individual plates, on this tiny little tray table, even though I had this massive seat. So I just found it really annoying trying to juggle all these plates, and I just sort of wished I had it all on one single convenient compact tray, like in economy. And also, the feeling then was basically that, plane travel is basically uncomfortable. There is only so much that you can do to make plane travel less agonizing. Mm-hmm. But Emirates, they do a very good job because it was very, very comfortable. Basically, business class, in Emirates, you have a very large seat that actually reclines into a full bed. So you can actually stretch right out.
Right.
But there's some small touches there that were really nice, like a little bit of privacy. You have a little screen that you can put up between you and the person next to you.
Oh, no, like a curtain kind of.
No, it's actually like a solid sort of partition that can.
Oh, I see.
That's motorized that can be lifted up in between, raised up in between you and the seat next to you.
Very nice.
You also have the seats. One small nice touch that I thought was when the seat reclines back to form a bed, the head part of the seat actually goes back into the sort of cocoon-shaped little capsule that sits behind the seat when it's in its upright position.
Oh, I see.
So when you have your head back inside that, essentially, not only does it cut the noise down, but you really it feels nicely sort of encapsulated, and you feel like it's a nice little space where you not only the sound it helps dampen the sound, and also if other people around you have reading lights on or are watching movies, you don't get so much of that glare. And you have a nice big pillow, and they actually come out with like a mattress that they can lay onto it's like a thin mattress that can be laid onto the seat for you.
Oh, really? Wow, very fancy. This is still in business, right? Not first.
Yeah, this is business class. And for the first time in my life, I actually slept.
Uh-huh.
So from Japan to Dubai is like about 10 hours, and I slept about 4 hours, which is, for me, is like unbelievable. But it just was quite comfortable, and stretching right out like that with your head inside this sort of little cocoon area and a nice sort of proper comfortable pillow, a little sort of tray next to you to put your glasses on, and obviously you have a blanket on top of you, and it was just really comfortable. And the food was excellent. Emirates food generally, I fly Emirates. I used to fly. Well, I do fly Emirates fairly often.
Right.
But Emirates food in general is very good. But the business class food was very, very good.
Oh, I can imagine.
And as with my previous experience with business class, you have all the things brought out to you on individual plates, and
right.
It's just like eating in a restaurant, really. And you get noise cancelling headphones.
Oh, they give you those as standard, do they?
Yes.
Very nice.
Which I've never enjoyed noise cancelling headphones because I find that I can hear the inverse signal.
Right.
Maybe I might be a bit sensitive because that's my job, I guess. But
that's your job, yeah.
So I usually can hear the inverse signal, and it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. And when you put the noise cancelling headphones on an airplane, again you can hear it.
Right.
But it's better than it definitely does dampen the sound of the engines, which makes listening to movie soundtracks very good. I watched the new, was it Rogue One Star Wars movie?
Oh, very good. Not that new anymore, but did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was good. It started off a bit sort of. I didn't really like the music. I thought that you can't really have a Star Wars movie without the classic music.
Well, that's quite on purpose, though.
Yeah.
In the same way that it's not really a Star Wars, like it's not Star Wars something. It's a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
So I think they've made it a real effort to sort of separate those things.
Yeah. Even despite that, like I realized that I knew that background of it, but even despite that, the actual the theme, like the actual music itself,
right?
Regardless of whether it was Star Wars or not Star Wars, I just didn't really go for it. Yeah, especially towards the end where it starts to tie into Episode 4, for a general low-key Star Wars fan such as myself, that was very enjoyable. And I also watched the new Ghost in the Shell movie, the live-action Hollywood version.
Ah, yes, I haven't seen that yet, but I have read reviews.
Yeah, it's
what did you think?
It's not very good, but it's hard to say. I mean, to begin with, the music and the sound design is fantastic, and for me, that was worth the price of admission alone. Both the music, the sound design was just excellent, and listening to that on the noise cancelling headphones was a very nice experience. The movie itself, of course, we're all familiar with the classic, legendary anime original, which of course comes from the equally classic manga by Shiro Masamune, which is an utterly mind-popping manga. He's a little bit like Tolkien, isn't he? He's like a fantastic world creator, but a terrible storyteller. But the anime movie attempts to kind of attempts to smoothen out the kinks in his storyline and the complex.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because I haven't read the manga,
Okay.
but I have seen the movie, and I was going to say I thought the storytelling was quite good in the movie.
Yeah, so the anime movie attempts to smooth out and to simplify some of the complicated concepts in the manga. And then this Hollywood version, the live action version, does it even more. So
Right.
the storyline is very simple. It still retains those core interesting concepts from the original. So I guess as a sort of an introduction for people to the whole world of Ghost in the Shell, it's good.
Did you watch the TV series of Ghost in the Shell, standalone complex?
Yes, I did, of course.
Because I gather that this live action film is sort of like a weird mashup of the storyline from the original movie with the storyline from one of the episodes of Standalone Complex.
Yeah, that's true.
But also trying to recreate a lot of the imagery from the original movie.
Yeah.
But sometimes in places that no longer make sense because these stories are not meshed together very well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you hadn't seen either the series or the original anime movie and you hadn't read the manga, you would probably say that it's pretty good. Unfortunately, I found that Scarlett Johansson's acting was a little bit stiff. I'm not sure about that casting choice, but the rest of the actors were great. It was great to see Beat Takeshi doing his usual thing in there, which is, grumbling a lot in Japanese and shooting people at point blank range, which is basically his thing. It was. So I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but definitely, if you like science fiction, and I do, and I'm always eager to see any science fiction, it's definitely interesting and definitely worth it for the sound design and the music alone. So.
Oh, cool! Yeah, I hadn't actually heard much about that angle of it. I think I'll put in the show notes the review that I saw, which is by a YouTube channel called Nerdwriter, who is, I think he studied film and he does. Not really reviews. He does like video essays about film and sometimes about things other than film.
That sounds interesting.
And in this particular episode, it came out only last week, I think, he talks about Ghost in the Shell and how it is attempting to be an homage to the original anime, but how it falls short in a couple of specific ways. And he compares the way that certain shots have been done in the anime with the film, and draws the sort of similarities and the differences and why the anime feels more effective. Because I think just watching it, you get a vague feeling that, oh, this is doing something similar, but it's not quite as good. But maybe you can't put your finger on why.
Right. And
I think he does quite a good job of explaining sort of specifically what it is that the anime is doing better. So I found that video, even though I haven't actually watched the movie, I wasn't too worried about spoilers. So I found that video quite interesting. So I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that myself, actually. Yeah, so that was Business Class. And it's funny that, when you enter a smaller airplane, like in this case, it was a Boeing 777-300, you tend to have to go in from the front when you're in economy class, and you have to walk through first class and business class in order to get to the economy seats at the back, right?
Right, in the smaller ones. Because in the bigger ones, you turn left for business and right for economy, right?
It's always this kind of sort of, I'm sure that with the smaller planes, they do that on purpose so that you see the what you get if you pay that extra for business class. But, it's kind of... I sort of feel bad about saying it, but it was really nice. And you sort of, you know me. I'm a father of two, so my idea of luxury is, two happy kids and some quiet time. That's my idea of luxury. And so I'm never been really comfortable with luxury. It always just feels a little bit sort of decadent somehow. And so when you're sort of strolling through business class on your way to economy, you're thinking, these people with their money and, how comfortable can plane travel become?
I think the answer in this day and age is it actually can be quite comfortable.
Yeah, and
if you pay for it.
I don't know that I will ever have the opportunity to ride business class again, but if I do, I'll definitely be looking forward to it because it was very nice. Now, first class. So I went to Dubai. The lounge was fantastic, and something really great for traveling, like a long haul international flight is a shower in the middle of it.
Yes.
So good.
That is so good.
And it just like, so I'd slept like 3 or 4 hours on the plane in business class, and I got off and I got to the business class lounge, this huge lounge. Again, fantastic food. A lot of the sort of local traditional foods from the area, as well as the standard fare, but just the quality was really great. And
was it like a buffet?
Yeah.
You just go and help yourself if you want it.
Yeah, you just it's all you eat what you like or you can eat. And like I said, just choices for these nice sofa seats with Wi-Fi and PowerPoints just as far as your eyes could see in any direction. It was very nice. And the shower. So you have a nice meal, you have a shower, and you just feel, really fresh. And
that's what, how long was the changeover then?
my changeover was 4 hours.
4 hours. Okay, so that's quite a bit of time to be able to sort of just take it easy for a bit.
So anyway, I was lining up for the to get into the business class, and the guy said, "Sorry, we have a full flight. You're going to be upgraded to first class."
Sorry
about that. It's like that's unacceptable. I paid for business class. Anyway, first class. So the difference between first class and business class in Emirates is actually, unfortunately, not that great. I think the best value for money and comfort compromise comes at business class and peaks there,
right?
Because you would pay all that extra for first class, and what you get extra, basically, in Emirates first class, you have actually like a cubicle to yourself.
Right.
And the cubicle has a door, so you can actually close the door. So you create for yourself this entirely private little space for yourself.
Right.
Mind you, the door is kind of like shoulder height if you're standing up. So when
Oh, I see. It doesn't go all the way to the...
No. You basically close yourself off from other passengers.
Right.
But the flight attendant staff, when they're walking by, they just have to look down and they see right into your space.
I suppose that is important. So, but if you're lying down, then, from head height, it feels, I imagine, like you're kind of shut off.
But then the thing is that in business class, you have, like I said, that sort of cocoon space for your head anyway.
Right.
So if you're lying down, you more or less have that anyway.
Right, I see.
And the flight staff would frequently come by and, they'd be bringing food or drinks or whatever. And so opening the door anyway. So it's kind of, I just ended up leaving it open.
Right.
So there was that. You have a really big screen, which is very nice. I actually watched Ghost in the Shell on that. And you have better quality noise-cancelling headphones, which is nice. And you have like a little sort of personal bar. You press a button and the drinks come out of this sort of concealed shelf.
Oh, I see. So you don't need to call the steward or anything. It's like having a mini bar, like a hotel mini bar in your cubicle.
Exactly. The other big difference is that... one smaller difference is that there's no overhead locker. So you have so much leg room that you can basically just put all of your hand luggage basically at your feet. So there's like about a meter between the end of your feet. And if you're lying down, there's like a large amount of space between the end of your feet and the end of the cubicle. So you can actually stow all of your hand luggage right there in front of you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which is actually really convenient. Because you don't have to get up to reach up above you.
Right, I see.
And then the last fairly significant difference is that in first class, you order from a menu the same way that you do in business class, and the food is actually the same. I think it tasted just as great as business class, but the big difference is that you order whenever you want to eat.
Oh, I see. There's not like a set time.
Right. They don't come through at mealtime like they do in business class or economy class. You basically, whenever you feel hungry, then you basically whip out the menu and you call them and they bring for you whatever you ask for.
I'm not sure. I think I might prefer the business class approach because I would just forget to eat. Because the times are so complicated anyway, right? You're crossing time zones and you're never quite sure when is the right time to eat when you're on a flight.
Exactly.
And so I think I would find it a bit easier if I'm just being told, no, now you're going to eat. This is the best time.
Exactly. And that is exactly how I felt. I actually didn't feel like eating.
Right.
Because I'd had this huge, wonderful breakfast in the business class lounge in the airport.
Right.
But I wanted to try it.
Right.
And, like I said, I may, in the future, maybe one day I might have the chance to ride in business class again, but I seriously doubt I'll ever have the chance to ride first class. So
right.
I wanted to try it and to enjoy the experience, but I just didn't really feel that hungry. But I know that the other thing is that, when the pressure changes in these sort of high altitude flights, the way that your stomach processes that, and the way that the feeling of hunger is somewhat different.
Right.
So sometimes you may not feel hungry, but actually you need to eat. And that is where the sort of time schedule of business and economy class, where the meal comes at a certain time, is sort of convenient, because you may not actually feel hungry, but the fact that you have food given to you, you eat it anyway, and that helps you.
Right. Yeah. I think, okay, so if I ever ride first class, I need to say, just serve me the food when the business class people, the business class peons, get their food. I'll join the peasants in business class.
The plebeians. Yeah, you could actually you could actually do that, and they would be happy to oblige, I'm sure.
Right.
And so the food was really good, but again, it's the same quality as the business class, and I just had to remember to order it. And other than that, the seat, of course, is a little bit even more wide than the business class seats, and it reclines like business class back into a full bed. With a cocoon for your head again, and the closable partition door. And other than that, I guess, like I said, the amount more that you would pay for first class, I didn't feel personally that there was, an equivalent amount of quality or comfort that I was gaining from doing that. So, yeah, I think that if you have the ability, if you have the means to afford a little bit of extra luxury, or you really are determined to make your flight as comfortable as possible for whatever reason, I would definitely recommend business class over first class.
Right. Yeah. I think I've flown business class a couple of times, but it's always been when other people are paying.
Right.
And so I always come off those flights and I think that was just so good. I think it might be worth it.
Mm.
And then I look into it and I think, it actually is worth paying a little bit extra, because economy is just the difference between economy and business is so great that, flying business does actually make a big difference, and it might actually be worth it. But then the next time I have to fly anywhere, I look at the prices and it is like 2 or 3 times the price.
Right.
And I do always end up buying economy.
Right. And,
but if you ever get the opportunity, business, just grab it, because it is great if you can, I think.
Yeah, I would say that it's worth it if, for example, you're in a situation where you must arrive at your destination alert and not completely exhausted.
That's true. Yeah, if you have an important meeting or an interview or something like that, then it probably is worth it. Yeah, if you can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was traveling internationally, as you said, for an interview, and I had to keep it to a really, really tight schedule where I'm basically landing and then doing the interview after a few hours or something like that. That would be the kind of situation where the extra, $1,000, $2,000 or whatever it is, I don't know, maybe not 2,000, but maybe the extra amount of money that you would pay for a business class seat. I would think after having experienced it firsthand, I would think that yes, it actually might even be worth it in that situation, because you do sleep, and being able to stretch right out is very, very comfortable, and you do arrive much less exhausted than it tends to be with economy class.
Yeah, that's true. And said that, this last trip, for me at least, was very good as far as jet lag is concerned. I didn't really sleep I was in economy and I slept maybe a little bit, but I also struggle with sleeping. I struggle with sleeping on a bus. Like, it's not just planes, but I can't sleep while sitting, really. So I kind of always struggle with that.
Right.
But despite not really sleeping very much and watching The Godfather...
that might have had something to do with it.
I arrived, so we had, on the way to England, it was an overnight flight. And we left basically in the evening, 7 in the evening, and arrived, I think at midday, about 12.
Right.
And so we just had the afternoon. And having slept maybe a couple of hours on the flight, if that, obviously I was tired that afternoon, but pretty much slept through the night and the next night, and didn't really have any problems with jet lag. And on the way back as well, it was the opposite. It was a daytime flight. So we left early in the morning. Our flight was at 7, I think. No, our flight was at 9, which meant we had to be at the airport for like 6:30. So it was quite an early sort of getting up time. But we headed to the airport, and again, I didn't sleep because this time it was a daytime flight. So I just didn't sleep at all. And we came all the way back, arrived back at San Francisco at about 7, came home and slept that night. And I have had no problems with jet lag at all in either direction, which is a first for me, I think. I don't suffer terribly from jet lag, but I usually get a little bit. And one possible explanation for this is that this time, when we arrived in Stratford, my parents gave me these melatonin pills. Have you seen those melatonin tablets? Have you seen those before?
No, I haven't.
So they hadn't either until they flew to Germany recently. And Germany's not that far, but, there's a little bit of jet lag. And somebody over there introduced them to these. Now, melatonin is the hormone that your body secretes, when it gets dark, to tell you that it's time to sleep.
Is this the same as a sleeping pill, basically?
Well, I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure. I think sleeping pills is probably a broad category of pills that work in a number of different ways. But what this is almost like a supplement, a vitamin supplement or something like that.
Right.
It's not really, it's not vitamins, but it is giving you a hormone that your body would naturally produce anyway. So it's not too weird, But, with a circadian rhythm, your body gets into a pattern of secreting this hormone when it gets towards evening.
Right.
So you get tired and then you fall asleep when it gets dark. And that's what gets messed up by jet lag. And so the idea of these tablets is, your body's not yet going to be ready to sort of produce this hormone at this time of day. So you can just take it and that'll make you tired and then you'll sleep and then your body will fall into the new required rhythm more easily.
Right.
And I don't know, for sure. I haven't really read any studies. I don't know how effective these things are. I'd never actually heard of them until my parents, gave us some. But when they went to Germany, somebody introduced them to it, and my dad took it straight away because he always struggles with jet lag. And my mum said, no, I think it's nonsense. I'm not going to bother. So she didn't take them, and my dad did. And my dad just naturally settled into the new rhythm and had no jet lag problems. And my mum struggled on for 3 days before she decided to take one of these tablets.
Wow.
So
wow.
There's no guarantee that the tablet, it could be a placebo effect. It could be she could have been suffering from an anti-placebo effect, because she was conscious that he was taking them and she wasn't.
Right.
So this doesn't count as any sort of scientific test that they are effective. But, even if they are a placebo, I'll take that placebo because I had no trouble at all going in either direction, and I was able to fully enjoy the almost 2 weeks that I was in England. And I arrived back at 5 or 7 in the evening on last Monday, and went into work Tuesday morning at the usual time and worked a full day without feeling too tired or having any problems. So
that's great.
Thumbs up from me on melatonin.
I have a 3-year-old child, so basically every day is jet lag for me anyway. So yeah, this time coming to basically what it means is I'm used to irregular sleep. So coming to Stockholm this time, I didn't have any serious problems with jet lag. But which airline were you flying?
So I was with United. But yeah, from here I think United is the most convenient, especially if you want to go direct to either London or Kansai.
Right.
You pretty much need to fly United. I think if you can get Hawaiian Airlines to Japan from here and change, obviously, in Hawaii.
Right.
But for direct flights, it's United or bust. So we flew directly from San Francisco to London, and then on the way back, we actually changed at Newark, New Jersey.
Not a huge fan of United, actually, myself. I think...
United have been... United weren't great to start with, and then with the recent... you saw the controversy with them dragging a doctor off the flight and all that.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so they're not in anybody's good books at the moment, I don't think.
Yeah, just the... there's only... I think any game developer who works in Japan and goes to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco knows about the legendary morning sandwich.
The legendary morning sandwich. The funny thing, so Well, let's talk about the sandwich first. But that was something. Actually, let's not. That was something that I was looking forward to when we first moved here, because I was coming with my wife, and I had been to GDC a number of times and had this sandwich. And the thing about this sandwich is the way they just plop it in front of you.
It's not like no. It's not that. That is one part of it. Like the presentation is just ludicrous at best. I mean, it's just basically it's kind of like having your gruel slopped out into a bowl in front of you. Except in this case, they just sort of flop out this sort of little alfoil wrapped sort of morsel for you. And this sandwich is just legendary because basically it's microwaved to bits, so it's so hot. That means that the cheese inside it is a cheese and ham sandwich, but the cheese, which is very, very oily, is completely melted, and all that oil has been absorbed by the bread. So what...
And the smell of it, like after you've been on a 10-hour flight,
right.
The last thing you want is this extremely strong smell of melted cheese.
Right. I mean, I can't think of anybody. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but really, it's shocking. I mean, who would think that is what you would want to eat after trying to get to sleep for like 8 hours on an overnight flight from Japan?
Right. And you're already feeling just slightly nauseous anyway.
Right.
And then that gets plopped in front of you. And the first time I thought I might actually throw up.
That is the legendary United sandwich from...
So I was looking forward to introducing my wife to this experience. I wanted to see what her reaction would be. And she's been on a number of flights to Europe and to Turkey, where we often fly Emirates or Turkish Airlines or airlines like that, which have very good food.
Right.
And this was her first United flight.
Oh, really?
But of course, we flew business class. And on business class, they don't give you that sandwich.
Oh, right. Right.
They give you a much nicer breakfast on business class. So I was obviously I much preferred this breakfast, and I was happier to be receiving it. But I was almost disappointed I didn't get to see her reaction to this infamous sandwich being plopped in front of her. And so this time, when we went to England, this was our first United flight to England.
Mm.
And I had thought, well, now's my chance.
Right.
Now she will experience this sandwich,
right.
and that will be the perfect introduction to food
right.
while we're in England, because you can only go up from there.
Right.
So I thought this might happen, but this sandwich is, I guess, peculiar to the Kansai San Francisco flight to GDC, where you arrive in the morning in San Francisco, because when you're flying from San Francisco to London, they give you an English-style breakfast when you arrive. You get an omelette and a sausage.
Wow.
And like a tomato, which is exactly what you want in the morning after a flight. And it was nice. It was good. So either they've realized how bad this sandwich is and they have sort of corrected it and made better breakfasts, or this is a thing for when you're landing in America, and that's the American breakfast.
Yeah.
And when you're landing in England, you get a nicer breakfast. But either way, she still hasn't experienced this infamous cheese and ham sandwich.
Well, my breakfast in business class from Japan to Dubai was muesli, full cream milk, some yogurt, some cut up fruit, and a croissant. Now that is a beautiful breakfast.
There you go.
Nice and light, and the fruit was wonderful. All very, very chilled, grapefruit and some apple and some grapes, and I think there was a strawberry or two in there. That was my breakfast, which is just great. It's just what you want to eat. I think maybe it's I don't know. It's funny to think that, well, there must be British people on this flight because we're going to London, so let's give them a British breakfast. So
I think it is common to sort of skew the meals to whatever the closest place is. So when you're flying from Europe to Japan, for example, you'll often leave with a European-style Western meal. Say you'll leave with an English breakfast and arrive with like noodles and teriyaki chicken for your supper as you arrive,
right.
because they seem to sort of fit the meals to whatever the closest station.
So that by deduction, then we can say that the representative food for the United States of America is a sloppy, oily sponge with a vague taste of ham and cheese, right. Which has been microwaved to absolute death in a tiny sort of gold alfoil wrapped sort of package of just cardiac arrest.
It is pretty vile, but it is a sort of unifying thing for people traveling to GDC. It is funny how everyone comments on it. Like it is well known,
right?
And there's a sort of camaraderie to
That's
it.
Right. That's right. It's kind of like a rites of passage to GDC.
Right. Right.
Can you handle the sandwich? Yes.